All right, everybody, we're going to get into some Nick Fuentes. So, I've seen this guy talk a few times, and obviously, there's a lot of controversy surrounding his name. Um, Sorry, I'm checking to see my mic's on. You know, you hear all these blank statements like he's a white supremacist, he's a racist, he's this, he's that. I personally have not heard anything that is racist. And when I see him in these debates, what I do see is he carries himself really well and he is a great orator. He's much better than I am. So we're gonna get into this. He was on Bradley Martin's show, and we're just gonna see what he's got to say. And listen, I like when people tell me I can't listen to somebody, I'm gonna go check them out. Don't tell me who I can't listen to.
Right, right. And you do you so I guess kind of getting into this your political sort of idea of what you want America to really look like. You want it to be more Catholic. You want it to be more Catholic driven, more Catholic sort of I don't know if the right word is owned.
Mhm.
But that's where you're coming that's where like a lot of your messaging comes from.
Yeah, I want it to be more Christian, and in part, I'm Catholic, so in particular Catholic. And I think it needs to be more white. I do think it needs to be more
Well, let's hear him out. Let's hear him out.
European. I think that you know, and I get I get this comment a lot. People say, "Well, you're Mexican. Your last name is Fuentes,"
Yeah.
and it's true. My father is half Mexican. His father's 100% Mexican. We've always had black people in
Love Mexicans, by the way. Was in the army for like 10 years, and most of my best friends are Hispanic. A lot of them being Mexican.
this country. Hispanics, Asians, going back
No, that ain't virtue signaling, though. I like everybody as long as you're cool.
hundreds of years. But we've had like 50 million immigrants come in 30 years. And I'm sitting here looking at a city like LA or like Chicago or New York, and I'm saying, when is enough enough? You know, we've had 50, 60
But
million people.
that's my question to you is how do you even say when enough is enough? Like how on your side, I understand
I think this is real simple math. You gotta nothing against, and usually Mexicans in particular are a pretty hardworking culture. I think a lot of the issues have stemmed from Central and South America, not even Mexican. Because most Mexicans they come here and grind, and they start businesses. They do pretty good. But a lot of those Central and South Americans, when I was in the DC area, MS-13s pretty much ran the streets. It was, I could barely walk my kid to school. It was absolutely insane. I think the math is simple. When we look at people coming in, let's look at how many are on welfare, how long they stay on welfare, and we'll get our answer right there. Because if you're a burden on the taxpayer, you are not a net plus to this society of the United States.
your perspective, but where is it for you or for me or for anyone to say this is enough? Because this country also was founded on that basis of immigrants.
Well, I would push back on that a little bit. I would say that when the country was founded, it was almost all English people. It was
Yeah.
almost all Northern Europeans, and almost all Protestants too.
Funny enough, though, they all kind of had beef with each other, like the Irish and the English, and they had different derogatory terms for each other. But I get what he's saying.
So it was ethnically homogeneous, racially homogeneous, religiously and culturally homogeneous. On all four of those
He says homogenous weird.
cylinders, you had uniformity. And then you're right, in the 19th century, it was no longer ethnically homogeneous because Germans and Southern Europeans and
Italians.
Eastern. That I'm
Yeah,
Italian too.
yeah.
I'm half Italian. Yeah, we started coming in, and then in the turn of or I guess midway through the last century, then
That's when it all went south, when the Italians started coming in. I'm joking.
other races started coming in with other religions, and I guess the country has changed over time. There's no disputing that, and the changes are baked in. We're never going back in some sense, and I don't think it's even possible. But when you say it's enough is when they no longer are assimilating. When you start to feel like what America is.
That's a fact. If you've been here for, we'll cut you some slack. We'll say 5 years. You've been here for 5 years, don't speak a lick of English. Come on. What are you doing? You're not trying to assimilate. You're going to find your own little pocket of people from the same hood you came from, and you're going to rock with them. That's not adopting American culture. And America does have a culture. Don't let anybody tell you it doesn't. This is the beacon of freedom. This is the land of hope. This is where people come to try to make a difference of themselves, make a little money, start a business, raise their kids in somewhere decent, get them a decent education. This is the last beacon of hope. I don't hear anybody talking about the dream anywhere else. It's America.
Is it starts to become uncertain. Does it mean speaking English? Does it mean being Christian? Does it mean having certain European values or constitutional values for that matter? A lot of the people coming in, they contest these things. And so you look at a city like LA, where, a few weeks ago, they're waving the Mexican flag, burning cars, protesting that illegals are being deported. You say, is this a free for all or is this a country? Or even in Texas, they want to build like a giant Muslim community center where
I saw that, and that's insane. Texas, you better keep your eye on that. That's insane. It's a slippery slope, my friend. We all see how Europe's doing right now.
people say that's going to be like Sharia law. There's going to be a giant mosque in the middle of it. Or in other places, they build a giant Hindu temple with huge statues. And you say, is America a whole? Is it a country? Or is it a patchwork of all these grafted nationalities where they kind of set up little India, little Somalia and Minnesota, little Mexico? And I think it's kind of undermining our national coherence.
But who is to decide what that is?
Well, ultimately, the people.
Come on, Bradley. You have a voice. You're an American citizen. I think Nick's about to answer. I apologize for cutting him off.
People of the country, you know? I mean, we have a system where people vote. And I think that that's really what the Trump election was about. I think in 16 and 20, and even in some sense in 24, it was a referendum on what do we want America to be? Because Hillary Clinton said, forward, it's going to be the future is female and more diversity and more wokeness and more gayness and more everything. And Trump said, no, we're in a sense going back. We're making America great again. There's like this recurrence. And I think that was a big referendum. The country said, we want the country to kind of be a little more conservative. We don't want to go so fast.
I was just thinking about this today, and I'm getting off topic slightly. But the term conservative essentially means you're trying to conserve American values of the past, or you're trying to conserve something that the left, in this case, may be trying to take away or dilute. And I think we need a new term, because I don't want to be conservative. I don't want to conserve what we had. I want to advance what we had. I want to make it like stronger. So I don't know. Any bright ideas, let me know.
Forward and keep going in that same progressive direction.
But do you think that means that there just needs to be no inclusion of all those other things, the mosque, these other things that we mentioned couldn't exist?
No, absolutely not. And I have a kind of complicated view on this. America has 350 million people. We're one of the most populous, one of the biggest countries. And we're, in a sense, no longer a republic, or even some would say, strictly speaking, a nation. Some say we're past that. We're really more, when you think about it, like Russia or like China, in the sense that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire. And so a country like Russia, they have a lot of Muslims living in Russia. They have a lot of Asians living in Russia. But when you think of a Russian, you think of a Slavic, ethnically Russian, Eastern Orthodox person. Nevertheless,
he's right. That's such an interesting point that I've never really thought about. When you think of an American, I'm betting a lot of different images run through your mind. You could think of it like maybe a black dude in the NFL, or maybe a pro golfer, maybe a female doctor that's Asian. You know what I mean? Like you don't really think about like a straight white male as being just the representation of America. But Russia, like when I think of Russia, I'm thinking, one of them Slavic guys with this thick accent or something, probably a little beard action, but that's crazy. I never really thought about it like that. Asians in Russia, also Russian.
Chechens and Dagestanis and Tatars and others are part of Russian identity. They're just on the periphery. Same thing in China. When you think of China, you think of a Han, ethnically Chinese person that speaks Cantonese or something like that. But you have Mongolians, Uyghurs. You have a lot of diversity in China. I think America can be the same way. We can be America with a black minority, which we always have had. We can be America with a large Hispanic minority. But the question is, if diversity goes too far, eventually America becomes nothing. Without that demographic core, without that monoculture that you could say America is rock and roll, hot dogs, baseball, red, white, and blue. In 50 years, is America going to be highlight and soccer and cricket? And
He's absolutely right. But I'm going to give him a little bit of pushback here. America was a sense of freedom and pursuing dreams, and we all had a similar idea of what America was. When things started changing is when, like he said, people stopped assimilating. When you stop assimilating, you lose that cultural identity. This is how great nations fall throughout all of history. They lose that national identity, that sense of unity, and then they collapse because divide and conquer. It's easier to fight a distracted opponent that's fighting within than it is to stop a nation that has a national identity and a sense of pride in where they come from.
and people are speaking all these different languages. I'm concerned about preserving that ethnic core. So we can be America with diversity. We just can't have so much diversity that there's no longer an America.
I see what you're saying.
This dude's nailing it, man. He's absolutely nailing it.
I guess my thought, like when I hear that, is, you talk about the future and like where it all goes. At some point, I mean, it seems like we're just going to be part human, part cyborg. Or excuse
Yeah.
me, cyborg, right?
Right.
Part human, part machine. Overall, not even speaking just America straight. And I guess I understand the ideas. It's just like when I think about it, who's deciding that, right? Like
Mhm.
why? Because okay, we're getting to this the talk about the conflict in Gaza and the Israel stuff.
Mhm.
Because I just, when I have this whole conversation, I think about this. I go, well, what about what we did to the fucking Indians? What about what we did to
Right.
the indigenous people? I mean, we essentially did what a lot of people today would say Israel is doing to the people in Palestine, which is like
Right.
removing these people from this area, right? What they call it, a genocide, ethnic cleansing, all these things, right? We essentially did that, took this space here. So I sometimes I have this conversation with people. A lot of times off camera, I'm like, at what point do we decide that it's not okay anymore? And I don't think killing, murdering people, removing people from a country, removing people from an area is ever okay.
Mhm.
But America was also founded on that.
Mhm.
So at what point are we discerning and saying that, like, okay, now is like, for example,
I'm going to push back on that a little bit because the settlers that came to America were trying to establish a life, right? You could look at the settlers almost as if you could any one of those Native American tribes, right? So all those Native Americans were fighting with each other. They were killing and raping and you know taking each other out essentially for land. They're trying to control the land, right? So the settlers did the same thing. They found this new land, had a lot of resources, great river systems, easy for transporting goods and services, and they started, you know, getting foothold of some of these territories. So when Native Americans came to impede on their foothold, um, they essentially lost in the grand scheme of things. And this is a story as old as time. Any area anywhere in the world has had tribalism feuds with each other, and the dominant tribe came out on top. But the only place you hear about people complaining is America. There's no difference. There's no difference between pilgrims from Europe coming and establishing space against Native Americans who maybe wanted them dead or vice versa than anywhere else in the world. Yeah, they got into a whole new topic there at the end, but so far everything I'm hearing of this gentleman is, you know, he started off with some real dicey stuff, but he's able to articulate his points really well and concise in a way that's tough for debate. I'd be interested to hear somebody actually going toe to toe with him that disagrees and can also articulate as well as he can. So that's a gift that he has. It's been real interesting. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Like, subscribe, and come back.